Hey artist friends, I have a quick and easy watercoloring tutorial for you today using one of my new stencils with StencilGirl. This is my Wonky leaf stencil and we are simply going to use it as a guide to watercolor some leaves on some card fronts. To my left, I have a palette that I've created with a bunch of the core watercolors, QOR by Golden, sorry. But I am using a set of 10 watercolors right now that are Daniel Smith watercolors. They're a curated set by an artist, and they are the funnest 10 colors. And if you are wanting some watercolors but don't want to invest in a lot, but just want them to do something kind of fun like this, I highly recommend this little set of 10, and I will link it below in the description box. It has a really fun variety of colors and a lot of colors that do some like color shifting, so it's a really neat set of watercolors to use for like some focal watercolor painting like this, especially if you don't want to really like dive deep into the world of colors but just want a handful of fun colors. And I'm going to use all 10 of these colors today on some card fronts. So I'm using some cold pressed watercolor paper below my stencil. I just have the stencil held on top of the watercolor paper with my fingers, and I'm just really loosely using the stencil as a guide to watercolor these leaves. Now I'm not super concerned that they're perfect, because part of the really cool thing about the stencil is that it has huge spaces that you can watercolor inside, so you don't really have to touch the edges except for that stem part. And then when you mess up like I just did and the stencil moves, when you remove the stencil, it's really easy to just clean up those leaves and the stem a little bit, because they're quote wonky leaves and they already look funny. Anything that you add to them to kind of clean up like an edge that got a little funny or whatever just adds to the really whimsical nature of the stencil that I created. So this first one that I watercolored is my very first time watercoloring with my new stencil. I'm really watercoloring kind of slow. I was really nervous. I took my time, like nervous, excited in a way. But as I go on, my hands and my my muscle memory really kind of remembered the shape, and it was so fast, quick, and easy to make several of these card fronts. My watercolor paper is cut for a normal size card. The card front is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I cut my watercolor paper down just a little bit smaller, like a 1/4 of an inch smaller, so that it'll have a border on my card. Now I'm also going to try out the other side to my Wonky leaf stencil, just because I wanted to see how it watercolored, and wanted to show you how it was going to watercolor. But I don't end up making more card fronts with the right side of my leaf stencil, but I wanted to try it out. It really makes a cool design as well. It looks a little bit more maybe St. Patrick-y, like clover-like with the greens that I chose, but I think it would be really cool for some card fronts as well. I just really liked the more detailed leaf from the purposes of the cards I'm making. I always like to have a stack of homemade cards on hand. I send them in my Etsy orders. I send them as thank you notes to artists or different people who do things for me or send me things or whatever. And so I like to replenish my stack often, and today is one way I'm replenishing my stack by making a bunch of card fronts with my new stencil. So I've cleaned up that left side, and I'm going to actually flip the stencil over and create another one of the leaves on the right side, but I needed to let it dry. So while it's drying, I'm going to pick up another piece of the watercolor paper and watercolor another set of that left side, or the left larger Wonky leaf on a card front as well, while I wait for this other one. This is getting kind of confusing. Are you as confused as I am? While the current one that I am working on dries, I'm going to paint another one. There, that's better. So I've set that aside, and I'm going to paint another one of the larger leaves on the card front. I'm going to pick up this really pretty purple color. I think it's lunar blue if I remember correctly. And I'm just going to simply watercolor inside the leaf shape. You can see how it's going a lot faster on my second try here. It's actually really kind of fun. I really enjoyed making all these leaf shapes. Now that I lifted that stencil up, I'm just going to clean up the areas that look a little bit funny. When I'm finished with this one, I'm going to set it aside and pick up that other side. Now that it's dry, flip the stencil over and put another one of those three leaves? I have no idea. I'm going to put another leaf on this card front with another shade of the green. I really like how these two leaves play together, and it really does look kind of St. Patrick's to me. I think it would be fun if you needed to send out some St. Patrick's Day cards to put these two leaves on the front. Now I know I could draw all these out by hand and watercolor them over and over again, but I'd have to draw them each time. I really love the confidence and ease that using a stencil allows me to create so many card fronts, so many beautiful flower shapes or leaf shapes in one setting, with not a lot of thought and not having to worry. I just cut a whole bunch more watercolor paper. I'm grabbing my palette again, it's another day, and I'm gonna just make a lot more of these card fronts. I've really edited the video down a lot just so you can see how each color kind of plays inside the stencil. I'm not going to talk through the rest. I'm going to allow you just to watch me watercolor, and then in a little bit, when I finish off the cards, I'll come in and talk about the ending process of how I make these cards. I will, if I remember correctly, I will put on the bottom, if you don't want to watch me watercolor and want to see how the video ends, I'll put that on the bottom of the screen. Alright, I'm finishing up the last of my wonky leaves here, and my final step is just to add some color flicking, color splattering to these to just create a little bit more interest to the background. They're kind of plain, and this just adds that one final step to make them look a little bit more fun. Before I finish them into cards, I did take them all outside and spray them with a fixative. Watercolor is not permanent until you spray it, so make sure you spray all your watercolors. Then I picked out a bunch of colored cardstock that I'm going to line my card fronts with. I decided to make these cards more like postcards. They're not open up cards, so I'm just going to write on the back side of them. And so each one is just going to be framed with a mat here. I'm picking out the colors that look best with each leaf, and then I'm going to adhere them with a tape gun. And that's it, a super simple way to create some really cool handmade watercolor cards using my new Wonky Leaf stencil. I hope you enjoyed watching this and are inspired to create some fun watercolor cards. Links to all of the supplies and my new stencils will be below in the description box. There are additional videos too introducing my new stencils. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day and maybe even grab out your watercolors today.